Call an order of the Super 2 Planning County Commission. It's 222. Okay.
2-2.
All right, I'll read this deal here. It is now 6:30. I call to order this meeting of Lincoln County Planning Commission. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce an agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and answer the questions from the Planning Commission members. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application, and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Speakers are encouraged to only address new and relevant information pertaining to the item. Above all, please be cordial to all meeting participants and refrain from side conversations and speaking out of turn. Please address everything to the board up here. If there's any questions, we will then answer the questions back out. And be cordial. Number one thing, just be nice. We will limit the public input to 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions of the conditional use permit applications are appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the Planning Zoning Office within 5 business days. All right, with that, I'd like to introduce our new Planning Zoning Commissioner, Mr. Scott Green from District 5. Scott, you want to give like 2 sentences about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Scott Green, 23-year member, South Dakota Army National Guard. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Guard. And on the civilian side, I'm a senior policy advisor to the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection for the VA. So,
Very nice. Thank you, Scott, and again, thank you for your service. All right, with that, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Hogan,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Enstead,
here.
Commissioner Green,
Here.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
and Commissioner Jungling is also here. All right, next is the approval of the meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read them and have any changes? If seeing none, we'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, Scott. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Enstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. Next will be the approval of the meeting agenda tonight. Mr. Brown, are there any changes for tonight?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Second, Johnson.
All right, motion and second. Do a roll call. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Enstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right, next, we will do public input on any items not on the agenda. So any concerns or anything you guys like us to talk about that's not on the agenda, please feel free.
May I approach?
Yes.
Good evening, Julie Van Leuveney, Harrisburg resident, obviously Lincoln County resident. Tonight, I just wanted to thank everyone for your service. I know sometimes you don't hear it enough. Chair Jongling, I want to appreciate your service to the city of Sioux Falls, for all of us who come to Sioux Falls and enjoy our lighted streets. So thank you for your service.
Thank
But
you.
seriously, I do mean it, and thank you for your service to our country. One of the reasons I'm here tonight is obviously I'm kind of surprised to see this room this full. 20 years ago, as we all know, it probably wouldn't have been because we weren't growing as fast, but we are now. And so I just want to remind our commission tonight that we have a chance to instill some leadership. I see we're going to be electing officers going forward, some new, hopefully, leadership. Not that the current leadership isn't good. I don't want to make it that way. But I just want to remind you that for those residents who aren't here, and I do want to give a shout out to the IT and the web services, because this has never been the time that Lincoln County residents have ever had this much information and the ability to watch these meetings before. So I want to thank the commission, to make that happen, and then also the people who actually do make it happen. So with that said, I know I have just a few minutes. I want to thank you for that. I want to challenge you. I'm going to leave you with, we know that economic development in Sioux Falls and everyone else is bringing people here. We know that our poor transportation superintendent is doing the best that he can to keep the roads going so people can keep moving. But what I'm asking you to do tonight is, because really you are the crux. I mean, we can make the laws and we can do that, but you're what really shapes Lincoln County, really. You're the ones that are going to help decide what comes here, when it comes here, and what it looks like. So I challenge you to do a good job. I expect good leadership and good things. I see good things coming. So thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Would anybody else have anything to mention for public input? Seeing none, we will move on. Any old business, Mr. Brown?
No old business, Mr. Chairman.
All right, floor is yours for public hearings, number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this first item is an application for a conditional use permit. This is for a building eligibility transfer. The applicant is Penty Farms LLC. The owner of the property is the same. Location is approximately 2.25 miles south of the city of Harrisburg. Parcel size is essentially, if you recall, this item was before you in December, and there was some comment about ownership and the way that it was proceeding with that. So tonight, the application will look very similar to the ones that we've done in the past, where the applicant has purchased an acre and the eligibility, which will be in this area here, will be transferred to this area down here. The purpose again for this is for a building eligibility transfer. Again, the owner has purchased an acre of this property and the building eligibility and be transferring it to the south. So the application does meet the criteria for contiguous and under the same ownership. And then this property is within the city of Harrisburg subdivision authority. So staff won't be platting this property. It will be going through the city of Harrisburg, but what I've seen from preliminarily is that the new location would be right about here on this part of the property. So again, this is an application that you heard in December, but it's been changed to meet kind of what we've done with other ones with the ownership and the eligibility. According to the staff report, staff does feel that this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, and therefore it does feel that that the application again is consistent with those two documents. So staff did find with that consistency that if it is approved tonight, staff would recommend the following conditions that were identified on there. The applicant is not here in attendance tonight, but he is on the phone, so if he can answer any questions that you have. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you,
Toby,
Mr.
can you
Brown.
go back, can you go back to the map that
Yep.
shows the acre? Wouldn't it have to touch the north side of that property to hook the two together?
It hooks right here. So this,
Oh,
yep, this
okay,
line here
gotcha.
is a parcel line there,
Yep.
so it connects right
So
there. Yep.
that's the parcel where it's coming from. That's not coming from the one above it to the north.
Correct,
Okay.
yep.
And now, since Harrisburg will have the plating, have you spoken with Harrisburg? What their thoughts are on this?
So it hasn't been submitted to them yet, but essentially it'll be a minor plat that they'll approve. So it's just it'll essentially just be a placement there.
One other question, Toby. What's the township's opinion on it? Do we know?
So a condition that I did put on there is that the township, the access would have to be approved by a road authority. We did send notice to the township, but I haven't heard any comment back from the township,
Okay.
so.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Brown?
Again, the applicant is on the phone, I believe, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, this time I'll ask the applicant to tell a little bit more about their application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brett Merkel, and I am one of the members and owners of Penty Farms, and we own that farm ground, pretty much that whole quarter section other than the acreage sites. And We have that one eligibility. We just like to move south to the corner. And it's just a better place for it, we believe. So that's our request. And
Okay.
by the way, the plat, the plat was submitted to Harrisburg, and they're reviewing it. They have to go through their process too, but preliminarily, everything looks fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? I am seeing none. Thank you very much. At this
Thank you.
time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application to come forward. Seeing none, I will ask anybody in opposition of the application to come forward. Seeing none. All right, I'll close the floor to public comment, and I'll ask a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move to approve the permit for the transfer of the eligibility
With the
with the conditions as
with the
found.
conditions.
I'll second Scott.
All right, we have a motion, and a second. Any additional questions or discussion, Commission?
You know, this is an issue we've talked about on and off, and, you know, currently this is the loophole to get through this, to move these housing eligibilities around, and, you know, currently there isn't anything that prevents people from doing it, but I'm just gonna go on record saying that I don't like it. And I don't think that this is what the intention was, when it was started, and I, again, would like to reiterate that in the future, I'd like to take a look at this issue and maybe visit on it some more as a commission, because I just don't think this was the intention of it when in 95 or 6, when we went to one per quarter, and now we're sliding these around all over the place, and we're running into more issues, keeping track of where they are, how many you started with in the first place, so on and so forth. So that's just my opinion. I will support it because that's the current, I guess, rules we have right now. But morally, I'm against it.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
I just want to say I agree. I think we need to have a serious conversation. I agree with Eric that we need to find a way to make these, get rid of this loophole. We need to have this back to where it's supposed to be.
And I'll make one more comment on behalf of the townships. I think that one of the missing things here is township approval of these. I mean, we decide that this gets to move and gets to be put on a township road and it gets approved. The township has really no say in it, other than they're responsible for taking care of it afterwards. And in certain instances, I know in Lynn Township specifically, there was one just recently where it's really burdened the township by this practice of moving, you know, basically what we're doing, it's a loophole to have a rural residential area on a township road without having to go through the rezone when we're doing this kind of stuff. And so I think those are all things that probably weren't an issue even 2, 3, 4 years ago, but I think they are now.
Yeah, and I agree. Maybe we'll start conversations, get that ball moving forward and see what we can do for changes and correction or adjustments. But with that, any further questions on this application? All right, seeing none, I will do a roll call. Commissioner Hogan. This is to vote yes on approving this with the conditions.
Well, yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling's a yes. Give me 1 second, do some paperwork here. All right, congratulations. And Mr. Brown, number 2, please.
The second item is an application for conditional easement for a public utility facility, specifically a fiber hut. The applicant is Alliance Communication. They are also the owner of the property. Location is approximately 1.24 miles southwest of the city of Harrisburg. Parcel size is approximately 30,000 square feet. I know you're going to ask, why is it not an acre? This parcel was platted a long, long time ago, so it is a lot of record essentially for zoning purposes. So it is eligible for building on it, even though it doesn't meet the acre requirement. Property is currently zoned A1 agricultural. As you can see from the zoning, all zoning around it is like zoning. These were some pictures we took of the property. There is a pad that exists. The south picture is looking directly on the site. There is a pad. This was previously owned by another utility prior to Alliance Communications purchasing it. This was the concept plan that they submitted with the application, identifies the fiber hut that will be built on the property. This is the only thing up for approval tonight would be the fiber hut. So the proposed location would meet all zoning requirements as far as setbacks and as far as separation distances. So staff did review the application, and in accordance with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan, staff does find that this application is consistent with the zoning ordinance, and does, if approved, would recommend 5 conditions that were placed in the staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you, Toby. All right, at this time, I will ask the applicant to come forward and speak on their application.
Evening, Commissioners. How are we doing tonight?
Good.
I'm Andy Holscher with Alliance Communications, representative for Alliance Communications. And this actual fiber hut is part of a larger project that will feed North Lincoln County and be providing the constituents of Lincoln County fiber to the home in those areas. So with federal and state monies that were approved by different agencies. So the hut itself is 11.5 by 20. It's all concrete. It's there to withstand 150 mile an hour winds. It'll be anchored. So there's all the equipment will be inside. There will be nothing exterior other than maybe a heating or cooling system.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
So am I correct that there is currently no road access to it?
So there is a access rate from the county, the township road. So it was owned by East River Electric prior to us owning it. They had a substation there years ago. Then we acquired the property last December.
Okay, because the number 4 on the conditions is that the access to the public roads must be approved by the road authority. So I'm just making sure that you're okay with the
Yep.
conditions.
There is an approach there already existing, so it should have all the requirements there, I would think.
It looks like on the plan, there's a future plan to build a shop or office on this site also, is that?
That was something just preliminary we threw in there just to see if it would fit. So we don't have any plans currently to do anything like that.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, I'll ask anybody in favor of the application come forward and speak. Seeing none, I will ask anybody in opposition of the application. Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public comment, and I'll ask a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit, the public utility facility.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional conversation, discussion? All right, seeing none, I will do roll call. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. Congratulations, thank you. All right, Mr. Brown, item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next application is an application to amend an existing conditional use permit. The existing conditional use permit was approved by the county in 2020. That conditional use permit was approved with a condition that the site be limited to 1,000 beef cattle. So the applicant is submitted an application to amend that conditional use permit to allow that condition to be increased to 2,000 head on the site. The applicant is Primo Feed Yards LLC. Location is approximately 8.34 miles southwest of the city of Canton. Parcel size is 20 acres. And the purpose again of this is to allow amendment to the existing conditional use permit. The applicant, again, was approved in 2020 to construct a 1,000 head, essentially a containment facility or for beef cattle. And that was this facility that you can see on the north part of the lot. And this is the proposal would be to add an essentially identical type barn that would allow house an additional 1,000 beef cattle. Subject property is this here. There is an additional CAFO adjacent to the site that is under separate ownership. That feedlot is an open cattle feedlot that is permitted by Lincoln County separately from this application. And that feedlot essentially operates on what I would call 3 different areas or locations. The applicant did submit all of the application materials. I did verify, again, the setbacks, or we can verify those internally as far as locations and distances and those separate types of things. But I did work with staff, Dr. Bob Thaler from South Dakota State University, to review the odor footprint. So again, for information for the public and for the board, is that Lincoln County has 2 main criteria for concentrated animal feeding operations. One, that it meet a separation distance for this size of an operation would be a Class A operation, and that would have to meet a setback of essentially 3/4 of a mile. But the second is the county did amend the ordinances to add an additional setback for odor, and that was based on the SDOFT, which is South Dakota Odor Footprint Tool. So I did verify the applicant's submittal with, again, Dr. Bob Thaler, and we did add, essentially at my request, these outside feedlots which are under separate ownership. Essentially, there's some dispute to whether or not that SDSU says those should be included or not, but we did include those into the odor footprint analysis and setback. And again, per the analysis that I included in the staff report, that analysis showed that it was still less than what the minimum separation distance is for a Class A operation of the 3/4 of a mile. So again, as stated in the staff analysis, the applicant does meet the criteria for approval for that type of an operation. Staff, however, does recommend that the approval, if approved, that you would amend the original conditions, which I included in the staff report, and would amend it and revise it with the conditions that are proposed in this staff report, and that would be the 11 conditions there. The 11 conditions should also address some concerns that, again, we've addressed. There hasn't been, if you recall, and I'm sure this is a new reminder for everyone, we haven't had a CAFO application for well over a year in the county. So this was the first conditional use permit we've had in over a year. But again, as shown in the staff analysis, that this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, and if approved, staff would recommend revising all of the conditions with these. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I have a
Commissioners.
bunch.
Wendy, go ahead.
Sorry, I do. I just, when you said that they have 20 acres, but on the GIS, it says 19.86 acres.
So that's, so the taxable assessable acres is 20 acres. The GIS acres, that takes out right of way and it takes out those things. But again, they're being taxed for a full 20 acres on that.
Okay. And then on our, sorry, guys, I need to get some stuff straight. Another question I have, because we can, according to 12.09D, that we can, the planning commission can review the waste management plans if necessary. And since we're going to, he's thinking of getting larger, have we reviewed his waste management?
So at the time that the applicant applied in 2020, that prior to her application, which was unique to this application, I can't recall of it ever happening before, but the applicant had already received the state general permit. And as part of the state general permit, they had to have an approved waste management plan. And so that has been approved by the state. And essentially, we adopt it as is adopted. But that plan covers essentially the two barns. It already was in place to do that. But as part of the conditions in here is that we require that it's available, that if anything changes with it, that they would notify us. Essentially, if anything changes as far as land application sites.
Okay. And was there something with a water issue with the neighbor back in 2020?
Yes, there was, I'll get back to it here. So this property here, and if you can see, I'm pointing at it right there. You can barely see it right there, but, so there was, that neighbor did approach our office and they had at the time a well for water. They weren't connected to rural water and their well failed. And so they had some individuals, they contacted the state and they had some individuals look at it. And they determined that the well, had some items in it that were pollution type items. Now, the state investigating determined it was inconclusive of what could have caused that. Could it be caused by the feedlot to the west? Could it be caused by some of the things on their site or any other types of agricultural type uses? But subsequent to that, we worked with the neighbor to try to resolve some of those issues, as well as the applicant and the adjoining feedlot also worked with that applicant. Ultimately, that property was purchased by the feedlot.
Oh, okay.
And so that property does have a waiver on it.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Mr. Brown, does the Dr. Toller's odor footprint study, did that also include the nutrient management plan, like as far as, I think, as to what Commissioner Hogan was referring to, like when they pump these pits and things like that? Well, I mean, the SDOFT that was found to be within the reason with their management plan, is that the way I understand it?
Yeah, they're looking at the site, they're not looking at land application sites, they're not looking at, again, if in the staff analysis, I point out that really what this is, the odor prediction is trying to do is determine how many days of odor annoyance. It doesn't say that there won't be days of odor annoyance, it just says, and again, in Lincoln County, we've codified it or made it a law that it has to meet 97% odor annoyance, which again attributes to how many times per month that there's gonna be days of odor annoyance with it. Which is a pretty high threshold in comparison to what other counties do with that. But no, it doesn't look at land application sites, and it looks at the manure storage facility areas. And then it also looks for the new barn and the proposed barn, it looks at the total manure area, which is essentially underneath the barn, the enclosed barn areas. And the rest of the open feedlots, they measured it from outside of the perimeters of the feedlot, so it goes fence line to fence line. But beyond that, it doesn't look at how many times they pump or those kind of things.
But it was found to meet all the thresholds that we,
The prediction determined that it would meet the 97% threshold under the current setback, correct?
All right, other commissioners, questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, at this time, I will ask the applicant to come forward and speak more on their proposal.
Thank you. I'm Ross Alstein with Primo Feed Yards, and met a couple of you a couple years ago, and a lot of new faces though too. So, Primo Feed Yards is myself and my 10 cousins. My dad and uncle own the adjacent, or my dad and 2 uncles own the adjacent feedlot, and they allowed us to purchase the 20 acres from them if we wanted to get into the cattle business and start feeding cattle. And as a group, we decided this was what we wanted to do, and they allowed us to start this. And been feeding cattle my whole life. I've grown up on a feedlot. Love the egg industry, and we chose Lincoln County because of the need for fertilizer, for for natural, for the corn, for NP and K. There's 2 ways to get NP and K to grow crops. One is cattle or hogs, manure, chickens. The other is you can mine it, and a lot of that comes from overseas or the Gulf, and it's applied. You buy it from the co-op, and then it's applied that way. We also wanted to utilize the adjacent feedlot as like a more of a background type feedlot where we could keep lighter animals in there and move them to keep the yards looking nicer. There was a lot of, we came off of 2 really wet years the last time we applied, and there's a lot of talk of the mud and the how the yards were just looked not very good. So this was one way to be able to use the 2 yards synergistically, and to utilize help, and to be able to put more money basically into the area. And that, if you've driven by since the last time, there's been a lot of improvements, a lot of upkeep that's taken place since we were allowed to do the first barn. Originally, when it all started, we applied for the 2 barns right away, and that's why we met all the 2,000 head for the state permits. We got the state permit for the 2,000 head. We work with nutrient advisors on all of the application for the manure, so we have a professional helping there. It's engineered. Both barns are engineered and need to be approved by an engineer and oversaw by an engineer. And we chose to build barns because we really do feel like it's kind of the future, you might say, or one route going forward with feeding cattle. It is climate controlled, you might say, just with no mud, no rain, no snow, wind, protection that way, and the pit is 100% containment. There, you don't need to worry about the 5-inch rain or the thaw on the snow and runoff and all those. So this is it's an all-in-one plan and site. Jason Pearson lives on site, and he's lived there I think 20 years now, because he was 18 the last time. And we obtained all the waivers from everyone within the setbacks, and in doing so got to talking with Dan and Tammy, and they were wanting to sell their acreage, and we ended up purchasing it from them, and now an additional hired man lives there. So we were able to get Jason help on the existing feedlot, and that way we can utilize the help, utilize the equipment, utilize the space there. Was one of the other reasons why we chose this site in particular. We made the pit big enough so we only have to handle the manure once a year. There's a lot of time there's spring application. We will only apply in the fall. We made the pit bigger, larger than a lot of original plans were, so that it could hold an entire year, and that meets state requirements and all that as well. So we only need to pump and apply manure once a year. We knife in the manure, so the risk of runoff and is a lot less because it's getting knifed in under the ground versus spread topically. So if there's a watershed or rain event or something, it's knifed in. We meet all the setbacks, and that's why we work with nutrient advisors to make sure that we don't overlook anything on any of the applications. Deep pitted barns are the smallest order footprint, partially because it's in a building, so wind and so forth won't carry any smell any further. We got the first barn built, and I guess I'm very proud of the way that the entire site has been. Even the adjacent dirt lots, we were able to use some of the clay to build up those existing lots, and we're able to pour concrete for better feed storage, and clean the place up that way. And I guess, yeah, it's been a long process. It started a couple years ago. Got the first one or amended at the commission to go to one. We still have all the waivers and setbacks from the original, so that's why this one came. Pretty much updated the nutrient plan and updated the engineer plan, and yeah, went for it.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Ross, when you guys are cleaning your pits out, are you hauling out in wagons, or do you use the lines that you drag through the ditches, or what are you doing there?
It'll be wagons.
Okay, and roughly how far do you gotta go with how much land do you gotta have in your manure management plan?
Typically, right on average, 500 acres per 1,000 head, just
Okay.
for rough numbers.
Yep.
Each year, and then we won't have to go further than 3-4 miles.
Are you guys able to apply it on that land that you rent around you, or are the levels too high there?
No, we can apply it on most of that, and
Okay.
yet there's pretty high demand from neighbors as well.
Sure.
Landowners in the area are asking for it.
All right.
One last question. What year do you know when Holstein Feed Yards LLC purchased the adjoining property from Peterson's?
I believe it was 20 years from, I think it was just at their 2002.
Okay.
Because Jason's been living there 20 years, and I believe he was one of the, yeah, it was right in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And so have you recently, now that you want to expand to 2,000, have you spoke with your neighbors?
Jason went around and was letting them know that we were going ahead with the original. There was one neighbor we couldn't get a hold of. However, all the waivers were signed and everything like that. So we've been trying to get a hold of them and catch them on their way home from work. But yes, went around and let them know we're going ahead with the original, because they all signed the waiver for the 2,000 head originally, and let them know, hey, we're gonna apply for the second barn, like we originally talked when we talked to them all the first time.
Okay.
All right, other commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Just so the public is aware, how much would you say, to take on an undertaking like this, to do it in an all-enclosed pit building versus a conventional outdoor feed yard? How much more investment is that taking on your company's behalf? Just roughly?
If you, I guess including, land cost, so that's one of the biggest for an open yard, but it's, triple, close to triple.
Right, a lot of
The
concrete.
investment. Yes, a lot of
steel.
concrete.
I mean, so this is a, like you called it, the future of cattle feeding. It's more, it's a way larger undertaking,
Yep,
you would say,
yep. And,
investment on your behalf.
yep.
All right, I think we're all good. Thank you very
Okay,
much for your
yeah.
time.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, anybody in favor of the application, please come forward.
I'm Nick Rao with Pro Ag Engineering from Jackson, Minnesota. I've been involved on the project from the start, designing the pit, attending the state permits, and then inspecting the facility that was built. And I just wanted to mention how well construction went, that the soils in the area are ideal. They're really heavy clay soils, so it made a really good pit foundation. It was ideal for that, so that was a good location for soil types. And just how the pit, like we talked about, is, it houses the same 1,000 head of cattle, would take 10 times as much ground on an open feed lot, so it's a lot smaller footprint. It's all covered and contained in concrete pits and covered and protected from the rain. So it really is a state-of-the-art facility, and it's really improved the condition of his open feedlot adjacent to it by having smaller cattle on that. It's really kept that a lot easier to maintain and upkeep, and it's really improved that site a lot. And since the construction of this barn, the first barn, the site has really made a lot of improvements, and it's really improved the area and the site. And if you have any questions on the structure, I can answer those, so.
All right, thank you, Nick. Anybody else in favor? Yes.
Good evening. My name's Andy Schulting with Nutrient Advisors out of West Point, Nebraska. We've worked with the Holsteins for many years in the area of environmental compliance and nutrient management. We had the opportunity to work with Ross and his group to write the nutrient management plan for this site. I do think it's important to point out for some of you commissioners that are new, is that our original application a couple of years ago was for the 2 barns with the 2,000 head. It was a condition at that time to only build one. There was an expectation that they clean up the open lots, which is not under their ownership, but obviously is family. They've done that, and now the barn is built, and I think they've really done a great job, and hopefully you all have had the chance to drive by the site and observe what they've done there. It looks really well, and the open lots certainly look better, and their waste control is in better shape there as well. A few points on the nutrient management plan itself. They have just shy of 1,100 acres in their nutrient management plan. That's about 50% more acres than what is required by the state to utilize all the nitrogen that these 2 barns will produce. So they've got about 50% more acreage than what is required. Beef slurry manure is one of the most balanced manure nutrient sources that we work with, and we work with species all across the board, from dairies to open lot beef to swine to poultry. And when we apply this beef slurry in subsurface injection, number one, it is injected subsurface, so it really minimizes any potential for odor. When we think of environmental concerns, air and water are the things that come to mind. And so when this slurry is injected subsurface, we alleviate both of those concerns. All of the land in the nutrient management plan is heavy soils, clay soils that hold nutrients very well. They have good water infiltration rates. That's really conducive to promote crop growth, and certainly when we're injecting subsurface, it really minimizes any potential for odor. So from a nutrient balance standpoint and an environmental stewardship standpoint, subsurface beef slurry injection is as good as it gets from a manure nutrient standpoint. The other thing that I would point out is just the structures themselves. I mean, all of this manure is completely enclosed under roof. It is stored in a concrete structure. Just environmentally, this structure, this proposal is as safe as it gets from an environmental standpoint. The other thing that I would point out, there was questions about the nutrient management plan. We wrote that plan. It was submitted to Toby. It's been approved by the state, and we did identify all of the setbacks that are required, not only by the state, but by your Lincoln County regulations. Those are all identified in the state-approved plan, and certainly your setbacks in Lincoln County are primarily more stringent than the state, and those are identified and mapped as part of the state-approved nutrient management plan. So I'm here as a resource. If you have any questions about the nutrient management or the environmental stewardship, that's my role, and it's a privilege to work with the Holsteins on this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else in favor of the application?
Shane Zylstra from Beersford, South Dakota, and I guess I could run you on the list all the benefits of having livestock, but you guys already heard that and know that, but I'm just one producer that benefits from something like this, you know, just have another outlet for grain. Competition is good, and opportunity to get fertilizer that's more natural, like Andy talked about, also is good, less pollution than commercial fertilizer. And anybody that'll help pay a little taxes, maybe take a little off of me. It was much appreciated, so just in favor of it, so thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in favor of the applicant? All right, seeing none, I will ask anybody in opposition of the application.
Anthony James Ventura, 47763 292nd Street. I need the overhead working, please. 1209B in the last paragraph states that a new confinement animal feeding operation is proposed where one does not exist. And so,
Sorry, the microphone's a little away from you. Sorry, thank you.
so it states that a new concentrating animal feeding operation is proposed where one does not exist. I think that was put in the rules years ago to stop stacking of these confinements. And so once again, there's already a building, they've already executed their CUP. And they had the option to go to public referendum or go to court if they didn't like the decision of the commissioners. And now they're coming back and trying to change the rules again. So you have to look at the past to understand the future. On July 7th, 2020, Lincoln County Commissioners' resolution stated the property will be limited to 1,000 beef cattle, past 3-2. Concerns at this hearing were brought forth about densification of animals, intensification of manure, odors, dust, fumes, and rodents, especially considering the non-conforming open cattle yards only 100 yards away from the barn. Now this operation is asking for an expansion of another 1,000 head of cattle. Have these concerns gone away? Not hardly. And now there's an open cattle yard to the east of the earthen base of storage of Holstein feedlot. When does it end? Adding another 1,000 head of cattle brings up to a Class A, and there will be no containment of any expansion once this happens. The odor footprint tool is already outpacing the setback set forth in the 1209 ordinance. If you add all odor sources and measure from the outermost point of the feedlot to the outermost perimeter of the feedlot, I believe this has been done. 1209F states that planning and zoning can increase the setbacks to any distance. This facility per the GIS map is 19.87 acres. The original intent was to have 20 acres of usable land in case there's a complaint. So the planning and zoning could adjust and use that 20 acres as a conformity. You can't plant a tree in the center of a road. So you have to do this differently. 1209I ordinance states that a Class and B A CAFO has to have lot size no less than 20 acres. This property does not meet the requirements as it only has 19.87 acres and should be returned back to a Class C facility with 999 head. And it not only does not meet the only 20 acre requirement. At the January 4th Lincoln County Commissioner meeting, 2 letters had been received from South Dakota DANR stating that there are issues preventing them from certification due to pending receipt of revised operation and maintenance guidelines that meet requirements for the general permit of the operation. Has this been done? Is this completed? Where's the paperwork showing this certification? Was the planning and zoning director notified about that compliance completed? or was the barn populated without the South Dakota DNR certification? Citizens need to see this documentation. Is this facility asking for expansion before the other barn is certified? The mailing for this CUP was substandard. The letter stated these letters were sent out to the properties within 500 feet of the project area. Citizens receiving this letter were extremely confused as they thought the new CAFO was being built 500 feet from their home. The 1905 ordinance states the applicant on the CAFO CUP must send out a note to property owners within 1 mile of said CUP. Wording should have stated not 500 feet. There were even citizens living 3 to 4 miles away that received notice. I did not get one. Oh, I'd like to know why. This is really unfortunate, is when I brought this to Planning and Zoning's attention, no correction was made to the mailing. I have asked to see the mailing list, but as today I've still not received that information. Sloppy way to do business. The South Dakota DENR, Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, merged with the Ag Department in the state level of 2021 to form the South Dakota DANR. Unfortunately, no one in Planning and Zoning has bothered to correct this information in the ordinances. Getting letters to the South Dakota DNR does not coincide with the ordinances referencing South Dakota DENR. So South Dakota DENR has really no authority in the current ordinances. Housing eligibility surround this piece of property and are again not being protected. Future sons and daughters of farming landowners will see their dreams of farming and building homes disappear, and Lincoln County puts the rights of CAFO owners before their long-standing land rights. Farm fields with housing eligibilities must also have to sign waivers before a CAFO can be allowed to be built. When will this change? A vote today no is saying that Lincoln County needs to correct the issues with errors in carrying out ordinance for CUPs and permits. A vote no on this expansion is a vote for the community and long-standing generational farms.
Excuse me, Ethan, your 5 minutes is up, I'm sorry. Thank you. All right, anybody else go ahead, sir.
Ernest Strutmeyer, 28503 474 Avenue, Worthing, South Dakota.
Sorry, you said Brookings, South Dakota?
Worthing, South
Worthing,
Dakota.
okay, apologize. Hearing aids.
We're talking about the engineering and so on the pit of these barns. And I've heard that there's some of them that they've got where they put a rubber liner in them. My question is, if this existing barn that's been put up and the one that they're proposing have liners in them, or if they're poured concrete and that's the existence of it. That's a question I have, and I'd like to get an answer to it when you can. And as far as the where the feedlots were and the open feedlots, apparently, those, I think the name was Sanders, those people that lived there, they had their well contaminated, which was runoff. Kind of got a pretty picture painted here, but it was actually runoff from the feedlots that went into their well and contaminated it. So they ended up having to go to get rural water brought in. And in settlements, apparently, they ended up getting bought out. So that's why they have that other place there that that they acquired, that other property where they have that hired hand or something now. But I'd like to know what the pits are gonna be, if the pits are lined with a rubber liner or if they're just poured concrete. Thank
Okay,
you.
we can ask that. Thank you, Ernest. Anybody else that's in opposition of the application?
Paul Paulson, 1309 West Murphy Drive in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Myself and my family own the half section to the east of the feedlot, down to, we own from the road that goes between the outside lots down to the church and the park. That's been in the family since 1871, when my great-grandfather homesteaded there. So the fourth and fifth generation own the farm. the fifth and sixth generation own the homestead site. And just a little background so you know how deep our roots are down there. One of the main concerns I have is if any of our family would ever want to build out there, because we would have, I'm assuming there'd be, I haven't checked it out, but there should be 5 building eligibilities there. And I own a quarter, my wife and I own a quarter just a mile south of the feedlot. And I don't know how many descendants they are here, but we're talking 30 to 40 descendants. So it could be very likely that somebody might want to build out there. But my next question is, I read where the setback from a park, it says a county or a state park is 1.5 miles. The park at our church has been there since 1945. It's probably never been designated as a county park, but it is a public park. Church services are held there all through the summer from before Memorial Day to after Labor Day, outside. Very well attended. 4th of July celebration is held there at the Mo Parish Park. So there's just a lot of activity there. And so I'm thinking that I would think our park has been, should be, if it isn't, it should be grandfathered into a community park or a county park, because it's on the, I'm sure you can find a lot of data on that. And I just don't believe there's any benefit for this feedlot to be enlarged for our area down there, because the Mo community is a community, well-established. A lot of longtime residents live in there, and I would urge you to reject this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else in opposition of the application?
My name is Dr. Faye Fossum. My address is 48071 289th Street, Canton, South Dakota. My family has also been part of Mo Parish. My dad's grandfather homesteaded the farm. I'm the 4th generation to own the land, and I'm the 3rd generation to live on that land. I'm here to share some information with you. On January 4th, 2022, 2 letters from the South Dakota DANR were presented at the Lincoln County Commission meeting concerning Primo Feed Yards LLC. They stated that a certificate of compliance for their operation is being withheld pending receipt of a revised operation and maintenance guideline that meets the requirements of the general public. As of today, the state has not issued that certificate. According to the Planning Commission consideration staff finding, a CUP will be issued for the construction of another 1,000 head barn contingent upon the receipt of the following, which states that this facility shall have coverage and continuous compliance with the general permit from the DANR. The facility shall have coverage and continuous compliance. Since the first barn has not been given a certificate of compliance, why is the county allowing for a second barn continuous use permit? On October 19th, 2021, Mr. Holstein received this from the Livestock Services Program. And it says, the certificate of compliance for your operation is being withheld pending receipt of a revised operation and maintenance guideline that meets the requirements of the general permit for your operation. If you have any questions regarding outstanding requirements, please contact the department. I would also read to you that Mr. Holstein received on October 18th, 2021. Part of this letter says, a revised operation maintenance guideline addressing how liquid collected in the foundation drain will be managed must be submitted to the department for review and approval. I live approximately, as the crow flies, 2 miles northeast. So the wind has to be out of the right direction from the southwest for me to smell it. However, I have grown up with hog confinements in 3 different directions. I know what it's like to have cattle manure. I helped move cattle manure when I was a child. I have a horse that produces manure. Fortunately, his manure does not stink. Confinement manure is different than the manure when I was growing up. It has an offensive odor. And also being the chair of the Lands Church Council, I don't want my members and any other people coming to Mo Parish for any type of outdoor service, whether it's regular Sunday service, baptism. We are having our 150th anniversary for Mo Parish this summer. I'm hoping it isn't smelly. And I would hope you would consider denying this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else in opposition of the application?
Jean Riley, 29217 South Dakota Highway 11, just south, 1 mile of the feedlot. I guess I didn't really have anything prepared, but I feel compelled to speak, hearing some of this information that my fellow neighbors have gathered. So without the certification and all of the conditional use permits not being met, that's concerning. And 20 acres, I grew up in Sioux County. I know these guys are from across the border. I grew up in Sioux County. They're running out of room there. There's CAFOs everywhere. And it just, I mean, go back to Sioux County. I'm sorry, but the land just isn't big enough for another 1,000 head. Well, I do have to give them kudos for cleaning up their outside pens. That's been a very nice thing to see. So certainly appreciate that. I just feel like another 1,000 head confined. You cleaned up the one side, but now you have kind of a mess on the other side. So I would be happy if you would all deny and look more into this and stay with the original conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, come on up, please.
Thank you for your time, you guys. Pam Gillespie, 1125 East Elder Street, Canton, South Dakota. Me and my husband own the property east of this section of the proposed expansion of the feedlot. The address there is 29064 480th Avenue, Canton, South Dakota. Our farm has been in the family for 122 years. The Brill Creek starts just east of the feedlot and flows through our property into a watershed. And I have this backs up from time to time on our property, as you can tell. This would just be south of our acreage there, that on our farm. The picture was also taken around the same time that Saunders well was contaminated. And we do have a tape, if nobody knows what that was about, if you want to listen to it. So, Lands Church, which is just a little over a mile south, has been there for 150 years. Also, the Mo Parish Park, which has been there since the mid-40s, We have church services in the prayer garden all summer long. And during the COVID time, we actually did services outside for the longer period of time. And we did the service on the FM station so we could stay in our cars. There's also weddings, baptisms, picnics, 4th of July, through the spring, summer, and fall. I have been a member there all my life, and I'd hate to see the more expansion on the feedlot and ruin the things for the church and the park and our community. I am opposed to the expansion of 1,000 head of cattle, and I ask you to vote no on this expansion. Thank you for your time, and I do have one more picture. Sorry. That is our Outdoors with God, which is down at the park, which has been there for years and years. And as you can see, right there is where the feedlot is at. So it really, isn't that far away. There's a little closer picture of that. So, we have spring, summer, and fall, activities are taking place out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. All right, anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Dave Gillespie, 1125 East Elder Street, Canton, South Dakota. Previously, I've served on the commission for 12 years. I did vote on this to allow the 1,000 head here on 7/7 of 20. And I thought that would be enough. So I've got a tape I'm going to play. I got it from the auditor's office here recently, and I'd just like you to listen to it. It starts out with Commissioner Landine, then it goes to Schmidt, Aaron's, Poppins, myself, and then there's a vote taken. So bear with me here.
I'm one of the no votes on this one. I've talked to Toby about it since then. Concerns at the planning and zoning meeting were the condition of the current yard on the dirt that's already there, and how that property is being maintained. And initially, at least from my point of view, it was presented like it was going to alleviate some of the problems that were being presented by the dirt lot, and that the cattle were going to be moved into the buildings across the road. You mentioned something that's pretty important to me as well.
This is Commissioner Schmidt.
And I've been down there. I was the one that voted originally for the yard to be expanded when Mr. Peterson, good friend of mine, said that. But on the other hand, today, there are just some areas of our county, in my mind, that should remain the way they are. And I think that I respect the individuals that live down there. I respect the idea on the parish and the church, which is conducted for some length of time. And I know that I may fly in the face of guidelines, rules, and regulations pertain some type of option.
This
where
is
you would
Commissioner
also put
Aaron's.
up an environmental bond in case there's any kind of damages that occur. As far as that works. Well, let's say the manure leaks and runs downstream and damages somebody. Is there going to be a bond available that they could draw upon? I mean, they'd have to prove their case, of course, but this is used in a number of other counties in South Dakota. I don't know if you've entertained that at all. I just, we've been looking through this had was things that affect their life on a day-to-day basis. But I would
Commissioner
consider it
Poppins?
at least one commissioner on what roles we take. We've all sat on here and approved what our setbacks are and what our rules are, what we're supposed to abide by, and so that everyone can be on notice as to what the playing field is like. It sounds like it's met the criteria. I have yet to have an argument that dictates that something that they've done in the application is invalid. We've had our planning and zoning board approve it on a 5-2. I'm very sympathetic. I grew up in a rural church, but those rural churches were founded on ag as well. There's a lot of discussion on what ag should be, whether we like it or not. This has become part of the norm. Mr. Chairman, after talking to legal counsel,
This is me.
I will not be making any motions on this nor seconds. I really don't have a conflict of interest in this. I do plan on voting. I really don't have a conflict of interest in this. I do plan on voting, however, and I do represent these people down here, and that's where I stand. I'll leave it at that.
And we have the vote.
For discussion on the motion now, Mr. Chairman? Yes, for discussion on the board. If the producer, obviously, we can't have discussions outside this hearing, but if you would have came and said, yes, I'll embrace this idea of an environmental bond, put my money where my mouth is to protect the environment, I could have went to the 2,000. But I want to see progress, and I want to see movement, and I want to see producers succeed, but at the same time, we got to balance it with the other folks. Question. We're ready to. Sean, please call the roll call. Commissioner Larry.
Excuse me, Dave.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Hold it. Yeah.
Thank you. 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I think you knew the vote outcome on that, so.
Excuse me?
3-2, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, to the 1,000 head, so.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
All right, anybody else in opposition of the application?
Good evening, Commissioners. Nick Abbas, 46905, 281st Street in Worthing. Now, if we look at the 2005 to 2025 County Comprehensive Plan, Section D, page 40, Section D, Land Use, Location, and Design Criteria, under residential and agricultural areas, it states the residential density of one eligibility building site of 1 acre or more for each quarter section of land. Now, you just talked tonight earlier about not moving them all over and keeping them more where they're intended. And so I think we need to look at and take into consideration the effect of this expansion and the building on these future building sites, and not just consider who's there, but like was discussed, the potential of someone moving in and how it would affect them. So that was my point, and then I was wondering for a clarification whether they had stated if they were knifing in or surface spreading the waste.
We can ask them later, but I
Okay.
believe they knifed that in. It was not
Okay.
surface spread.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else in opposition of the application? All right, nope. Yes, please, thank you.
Dylan Paulson, excuse me, Dylan Paulson, 29129 480th Avenue. In that circle, my property is in that circle. This was my uncle that, they own the half section, my family does, I own the acreage. I worked for Barcade for 12 years, I hope I'm not losing any friends here, Ross. But I just wanted to say that I'm not in favor of the expansion. I was asked to sign the waiver the first go. I did not sign the waiver. I think they moved some property lines or did something. But I just wanted to be on the record that I'm worried about my property value on my acreage. It's probably the biggest investment I'll ever make. And like my uncle had said, I'm the 5th generation. My little guy is the 6th generation. I'd love for him to live on the family homestead acreage. And another thing that I'm concerned about that we had talked about earlier was the building eligibilities and what that could look like for my kids and their kids. Just to keep that in mind. So, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. All right, anybody else in opposition of the application? Mr. Brown, do you have a letter to read?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. So this, I believe this person is in attendance, so I'll read the letter. This is from Cindy Thomas. I did place a copy of this letter on your podium as well, but I will read this into the record. So Lincoln County Planning and Zoning Commissioners, I am writing this letter today with grave concerns over the CUP expansion of Primo Feed Yards LLC. While it looks like there's been better understanding of the order footprint tool calculations by P&Z, it still has not gone far enough to calculate what the actual setback should be for this project. Unfortunately, I have not been able to see the worksheet that was put together for the CUP for the determined setbacks of 3,427 feet that you see in the application. Without the worksheet, I do not know what measurements were sent to SDSU. But after using the GIS interactive mapping system for Lincoln County, I believe the numbers supplied to SDSU for calculating the total odor emission factor are incomplete, not only in the total odor emission factor numbers, but also in measuring the setback. The total odor emission factor for the current barn and proposed barn with its steel or cement underground manure storage for both is 898. The large open cattle yard to the south, along with the 2 earthen basins, become part of the cumulative odor emission factor and calculate to a total odor emission of a factor of 1753. This leaves the total odor emission factor for this area at 2,651. Please also note that there are crusted manure piles in the cattle yard to the south, and there is another cattle yard to the east that is being populated with cattle that should be added into the total odor emission factor. Was this done? If you then follow the setback distances for a 97% odor annoyance-free frequency for southeast South Dakota at 2,651 total odor emission factor, you are over a 3/4 mile setback. This number already outpaces the setbacks for a Class A CAFO as outlined in the Section 1209 CAFO ordinances. It also appears that measurements are taken from the current barn and proposed barn instead of the outermost point of the feedlot, as stated in our 1209F, Section 1209F ordinances. And per conversation with SDSU Professor Dr. Yang, setback measurements for the odor footprint tool need to be taken from the outermost perimeter of the feedlot, which includes the perimeter of the cumulative impact odor area, which is the large open cattle yard to the south and east. So using the correct total odor emission factor and perimeter setback, I believe you have 2 properties that need waivers before this expansion can be allowed. And she lists, the first would be 47922 297th Street, measures 3,725 feet from the south edge of the open cattle yard. And then number 2 property would be 29129 480th Avenue, measuring 3,806 feet from the southeast earthen basin on the cattle yard. And note, Class A confinement already has a 3/4 mile setback from dwellings, and measuring from the barn to the dwellings defeats the purpose of the cumulative odor aspect of the odor footprint tool. I would ask that you vote no tonight on the expansion. The South Dakota odor footprint tool is very clear as to including other surrounding odor sources for setback calculations. SDSU has been specific in the need to measure from the perimeter of the odor source, and our own ordinances state that setbacks shall be measured from the outermost point of the feedlot. It does not say barn or CAFO. It is important to include all aspects of the odor footprint tool in our ordinances when determining the setback. Respectively, Cindy Thomas, 48131 Laurel Oak Lane, Canton, South Dakota, 5713. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, with that, I believe everyone's had their moment, so I'll close the floor to public input. And I'll ask a motion from the commission so we can have a discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve. Scott?
With the,
With all the
with
conditions.
the amended,
With the amended conditions.
okay, thank you.
Second, Johnson.
All right, we have a motion, and a second. Let's have a discussion. Who wants to go first?
Mr. Chairman, this is actually in my district. When Commissioner Gibbon appointed me, I made it very clear to him that I think District 2 is a highly, agriculture is what it is. I think it really goes against, whereas people might have specific problems with this one when it does meet all the findings, backed up by a lot of the, backed up by Dr. Bob Toller, for instance. He's won national awards for his work on this type of thing. The extra overhead that this group is taking on by running it as a enclosed confinement barn with, it ensures clean water runoff. They can control when they handle the manure. I would seriously suggest that they do so in a way that helps out the folks with the neighboring churches. Let's maybe try to stay off of the weekends, maybe even Fridays, just to be good neighbors there, I guess. But I guess I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
Yeah, so I voted yes on this the first time it went through. And, I too live down by these guys. They are right in between two of my farms. And so I go back and forth there quite often and see what they're up to. And I will commend you on all the hard work you've done, and you've cleaned it up. You guys did a lot of work this summer. It looks real nice when you go by there. And as far as your new facility, I think it looks awesome, and you guys are doing a good job. There was a comment that, I forget who it was from, that maybe it didn't look so good on the north side of the property yet, but just by looking, I don't think they've quite finished everything there, and there's probably some dirt work to do and so forth. But near as I can tell, a lot of the opposition we got at the last time we heard this was just what it looked like to the eye when you drove by. And I feel like these folks have done a really good job and put a lot of work into cleaning that property up this summer. And so I think they've done that, and they want to be good neighbors. I know Jason, and he does a good job, and I think having a little extra help's going to help him, and they're going to be able to keep the tidiness a little bit. As we talk about these acreages, and I'm going to get a little windy if that's okay, Jerry, but as we talk about these acreages, and it's something that I'm passionate about, because currently acreages have a whole bunch of protections from livestock and from farming and so on and so forth. But facilities like this and facilities like Shane's have very little protection against acreage encroachment. And it's something that I think is unfair. I use the example that I could go buy a piece of property today that meets all the setbacks currently, and I would have to go through this whole process that these folks have had to go through and have time for public comment and so on and so forth. And I could get that all done, and tomorrow somebody could build an acreage across the road, and now I haven't met my setbacks if I haven't built it yet. And without any notification. And so I can appreciate that people are worried about future acreage sites that might be valuable, that maybe they won't be able to sell, and so on and so forth. But I've asked many times too, if somebody can give me an example of a property that has decreased in value based on its proximity to a livestock operation. And I keep pretty good tabs on land values and real estate values in southern Lincoln County, and I'll be honest with you guys, I can't see where it makes any difference at all. And so we hear that a lot, that, well, I'm worried about my property values going down, worried about this. I visually can't see that, not with the way land's selling right now in our area, not with the way acreages are selling. Actually, I think, if anything, everything has accrued in value, and it really doesn't matter where it's at. So I think that argument is, I just don't think it holds much weight. As far as the odor, like I said, I live in this neighborhood. I drive by this place quite frequently. I've got a farm a mile south of Land's Church, and so going back and forth between those places. And for whatever the reason, I don't smell it. I don't think there is a huge odor problem. And I think that with the confinement building, that even makes the odor, if there is an odor problem, even better. What I do wonder sometimes, and I have sympathy for the people at Lands, and if they are smelling an odor smell, the one thing I do notice when I drive down there is there's generally a big stockpile of manure, kind of in the middle of the section there, and so maybe that's what you're smelling too. I don't know. So I think with that, it's somewhat unfair to blame it all on this when there is other manure in the area, coming from a different feedlot, I would assume. As far as the other observation I'll make is that the landowners that own the land right around this are not hearing objection, worried about housing eligibilities, so on and so forth. So I would think that if there was gonna be a problem, it would be the closest neighbors that would have an issue. And so something that I struggle with is that people that are 3, 4, 5 miles away like me, have a bigger issue with it than somebody that's right there. And that's just me personally. I think I got through my list. I would agree with Commissioner Johnson. I go to a country church north of there, and we had incidents where the neighbor spread manure the Friday before Easter, and that wasn't awesome. So if you guys could do it during the week, we'd sure appreciate it. So with that, I will be in support of it, and thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. I always do appreciate whenever people can explain what they're thinking and why they're voting and their reasoning. It always helps everybody understand. Commissioners, any other discussions? Commissioner Hogan.
All personal feelings aside, I guess I'm questioning this whole, your first barn hasn't been given a certificate of compliance from the state. In October, they were requested a drainage plan be submitted to be in compliance. I haven't seen any proof that those two things were done. I don't know why we would even entertain going forward with this if these two things haven't been done.
Do we know that they haven't?
Pardon?
Do we know that they haven't?
That's what I said. If these things haven't been done, why would we even entertain this? If they're not in compliance, there should be no entertaining this at all. So at this point, unless I know that these things are done, I will be against it.
Can somebody speak on that? Because I had a question on that as well.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
I also had that written down. If someone had a question, or can answer that?
Nick Rowell, Pro Ag Engineering. The October 18th, 2021, that was the certificate of compliance, and the permit coverage was granted in that letter. So it does say that specifically in the October 18th, 2021 letter from the state DEANR. So that construction completion has been certified and the site is permitted.
Thank you, Nick.
Do we know about the?
If you need,
I'm sorry.
I do have that with, I guess if you want to
Yeah.
see that, I could.
I would like to, and also, what about the drainage plan from October 21st that was supposed to be submitted?
Yes, that has also been submitted.
Has that been approved?
That has been approved.
Can we see that also?
It's listed right here. I don't know if you want me to read that here. or-
Acres of drainage area.
And in regards to the tile that was mentioned, the drainage system, the operation went above and beyond and placed a tile around the footing of the pit. And that wasn't required, but they wanted to put that in for the construction to help dewater during construction. They could have removed that tile, but they decided to leave it in as a monitoring point to check if there was any water pressure around the pit or if there was any leakage around the pit. So they have went above and beyond the minimum requirements and have a leakage detection in place to inspect it, and that's what they're requesting for on the drainage plan. So it was just a matter of checking that tile before they pumped out the pit to make sure it wasn't leaking and that there wasn't groundwater pressure on the pit. So that was an additional add-on that they added to the plan.
Could you speak, there was one gentleman that had a question about a liner in the pit. Is that anything that's relevant to what we're talking about?
No, there's water stop. There's a bentonite or a polyurethane water stop placed at every construction joint in the pit. So it's not lined with any rubber. It is all concrete, but every joint is sealed. Any other questions?
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, Commissioners, additional conversation?
So I do have a question, you know, being new to this, you know, when we start talking about, you know, I heard a comment from one gentleman, usable acres versus, so GIS 19.86 acres, taxed acres, 20 acres. So when we start having conversations about permitting based on what I read in here, having it say 20 acres, but not necessarily specifying 20 taxable acres or 20 usable acres, historically, based on this, based on the commission, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not setting a precedence where we start, you know, if there's other rules that say 1 acre, but all of a sudden it's 0.9 acres, you know, that we take that into consideration as, you know, we move forward with this. You know, to me, I tried to go through and see where it talks about density area yards, and, you know, it says 1 acre, you know, unless larger is required, but nowhere have I found in here where it says, you know, or smaller permitted, right? Which is a struggle for me in, you know, determining, you know, at some point, obviously, this was determined to be a Class A yard, 20 acres be Class AB, and then, you know, anything less than that would, you know, potentially make the requirements of a Class C yard. So that's, you know, one thing that I think that, you know, moving forward as we have these conversations, you know, to me, it's very specific that it's 20 acres, not necessarily 20 taxable acres.
Good to get definition on that.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, hold on, Nick. No, we'll ask you a question if we have a question for you.
I had an error, I guess. I wanted to clarify, I guess.
Okay.
The date of the letter. It was actually an October 19th, 2021 letter. And I guess right here it says permit coverage. I'm granting coverage under the permit. And permit coverage is for the maximum 1,000 head of that barn that was built. So I just wanted to clarify, it was a day later, there was a second letter. There was the first one on the 18th and the second one on the 19th.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
I struggled with the 20 acres to begin with. I had asked when I first got here this evening, I struggled with that because of the fact that it does specify 20. It doesn't say 20 taxable, 20 usable, it says 20. And so if we're going to go forward and if we want to have some sort of regular, voting, I think we need to make sure that we're doing this properly. I mean, are we going to do usable or taxable on this one, and then on the next one, oh, well, it's okay, we're gonna use the taxable on this one, or the usable on this one? I think we need to, this is a very, very weird situation. On how that even got by the first time with it not even being 20 acres.
Well, but technically it is.
Not
You're
really.
getting taxed on 20, sure it is. Yeah, you
No,
own, you
it's
own that.
19.87.
That's what the GIS, the draw, but it says right on here, 20 taxable acres. Assessed acres, 20.
So I'll clarify, and sorry I jumped up, but. I'll
Yeah, no,
clarify
please
it,
do.
so. Jake's gonna put it up on here once, but, so taxable in the GIS, it's based on the plat, okay? So on the parcel browser, it's listed as assessor, which is what I call taxable, which is based on this, which is the plat. So it's very clear, we always base it off the plat. GIS calculation is a hand calculation, and sometimes it includes right-of-way, sometimes it doesn't include right-of-way. But the basis is always and will always be this, which is the plat, which, as you can see, it says containing 20 acres. So that, but any questions on that? So this is what we always base it on. And that's actually what the taxable or assessor bases it on, is the plat, which is the legal document for the property. We're consistent, we always use that. So we never use the GIS calculation, so.
So we could make a note maybe to make amendments to this in the future, maybe platted,
In the
20
definition,
platted
yes.
acres, or we can do that in the future to clarify.
Just for clarification.
Next time we go through and amend the bylaws.
Sure, yep, yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, one more thing, on a personal note, and kind of to piggyback on Commissioner Scott's discussion about values of acreages and things like that. For the citizens that are here, I live within 2 miles of a CAFO in the southwest part of the county in Delaware Township that's many multiples the size of what this group is putting together. And I've recently both sold and constructed a new residence and had subsequent appraisals, and I can say that the presence of that CAFO had no effect on my property values.
All right, other commissioners? All right, I did have a number of questions myself, but they've been answered throughout the discussion. Yeah, the certificates was a question I had, but we saw the letter right there where they were approved for the 2,000 head and buildings were certified, so that answered all that. Future land use, I do feel for that, since I have some stuff not around there, but, similar, but I also have a hard time holding back someone's present operation for something that could happen in the future, which would be, it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, where this group is ready to do a quality installation right now, so that's one of my thoughts on that. Also, all the waivers have been signed, so it is legal by everything, and it does meet setbacks. Yeah, I understand, 100% understand what neighbors think and feel, but I don't see any reason not to approve this. All right, if there's any other discussion, we sure can keep talking if everyone's okay, we'll Do a roll call. Okay. Roll call, and this is to approve with the conditions. Commissioner Hogan,
No.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
No.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jung is also a yes. Thank you much. Next order of business is the election of the planning and commission officers. So per the bylaws, Toby, do you read this or do I do this? You can read it. Good, I love reading stuff. Per the commission, county planning commission bylaws, the officers planning commission shall elect amongst ourselves a chairperson and a vice chair, elected for 1-year terms at the second meeting of each calendar year. There shall be no term limits imposed on either the chairperson or the vice chair. The elected officers of the planning commission must be elected from the appointed planning commission members. Currently, the chairperson is Jerry Jungling, myself, and the vice chair is Eric Scott. So at this time, we will take motions to nominate chair and vice chair.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and say I appreciate everything you do, Jerry. And I think you do such a good job. I would like to make a motion to make you chairman for another year.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think in past years, we previously moved up vice chair to chair and continued the rotation. I realize that the commissioners decided, which I didn't agree with, to keep theirs. I just think that's dangerous. I think we need to always, not that you did a bad job, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from everybody. But I just think that's not a good precedent to set. I don't think the commissioners set a good precedent, and I don't think that's a good precedent to set here. It's continued to move up in rotation, and I don't believe it should stop now.
Toby, do you have a history you can share with that, with what Commissioner Hogan stated? I've only been here with Commissioner Pashby and then myself. I don't know how many terms he served.
So when I started, I think it was Chairman Monty DeRusso, and Monty had been chair for a number of years.
Oh, that's right, I forgot what Monty is.
And then when he went off, then Commissioner Pashby was on for, I believe, 2 years, I believe. And then you were appointed. But going back, it typically, I think Chairman DeRusso was chair for at least 5 or 6 years straight. And then I think before that, Commissioner News was, I believe, chairman for about that long too. So it's hard to say what precedence is, I guess, but there's nothing in the bylaws that state that you can't be reelected as chair or vice chair. So I guess I'll state that, as it stated as you read, so.
All right, thank you. All right, we do have a motion second, and again, honestly, everyone, I know I was the one nominated, but I'm just happy to be on this board, so whatever happens, I'm just happy to be in the county and help. All right, we'll do roll call. I forgot I gotta do that part. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
I don't think I recuse, I'm not gonna vote for myself, so.
We don't need your vote.
All right, next order of business is a vice chair. Is there any nominations for that?
Is there anybody that would like to be the vice chair? I mean, is that appropriate to ask?
Yeah, I would like to.
Nominate Wendy Hogan.
Second, Scott.
We have a motion, and a second for Commissioner Hogan. Any discussion? No, I think Commissioner Hogan, you're strong, and with your ties to community, I think that'd be awesome. So we'll take a motion. Commissioner Hogan,
Yeah, I'm not gonna vote for myself.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. All right, thank you, everybody. I believe. Missed my agenda here. Or is that, do we have anything else to discuss? Mr. Brown?
No, I just, for informational purposes, I'll mention that, since the commissioner, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, we don't have a commission rep because there's a conflicting meeting. They're meeting with the city of Sioux Falls tonight on the application for the Tom Winker rezone, which is in the joint jurisdictional area. And so I believe both of those applications were denied tonight, as a text message, and then the board also considered the two rezonings today, the one east of Worthing and the one south of Harrisburg, and both of those were upheld your recommendation of denial on both of those too. So just an informational.
Thank you. That's always, sometimes we don't ever see how those turn out. All right, with that,
Mr. Chairman, if the
Yes.
floor is still open for new business, I would like to move to coordinate a special meeting within the next 6 months with the county commissioners solely to address the building eligibilities and concerns that we may have.
Yep.
yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I would say the sooner the better, so we can all get on the same page.
But does that also include the Sioux Falls being some of ours fall into, to make sure we're all, being we're in their expansion area also, that to bring us all to the table to make sure we all have a common understanding?
I think that would just be us. Mr. Brown, or would that be joint?
Well, I guess the first step is I'll probably put it on the agenda next month just for an internal discussion of the planning commission and then see where that's heads and then determine what we'll proceed with after that, if that's
Yeah.
acceptable.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, that sounds fair. Thank you for that suggestion. Thanks for doing that. All right, with that, any other new business?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I forgot one thing. So also tonight, you would have alternates for the board too.
Yes.
And so your current alternates are, again, would be Monty DeRusso and Ron Elbers. And again, there is practice with that where it's once you've met your term limits, then typically we have those, you serve an extra 2 years to be alternates. But our last two planning commission members resigned. They didn't complete their full terms. And so we couldn't, so Ron and Monty have been alternates for, I believe, probably 4, 5, 6 years. Monty didn't even return my call because he probably thought I was asking him to come to a meeting tonight. But typically, we don't have a practice beyond that. So that's one thing that separates us. We have bylaws very clear about how we do that, but with alternates, you're allowed to appoint them. So I guess my recommendation, I did talk to Ron, and he did say he's willing to continue to serve on it. And then we come up with a plan probably after that to figure out how we're going to fill those positions. So
Is that appointment by the chair or by the commission?
by the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I make a recommendation, we reappoint Monty and Ron Elbers as alternates for the planning commission.
I'll second Scott.
All right, motion is second. We'll do a vote. Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensted,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jungley is also a yes. All right, with that, I make a motion to adjourn. Have a second?
I'll second Scott.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, everybody.